in the ministry. He's part of the core team that has devised the national software product policy, apart from being a lead negotiator in a number of significant global forums on e-commerce such as G20 and WTO. Dr. Garg is an alumnus of IIT Roorkee, from where he did his BTech in electrical engineering. He did his MTech and PhD in electrical engineering from IIT Kanpur. And then he worked in VLSI and MEMS systems before joining Government of India. Dr. Garg has credit to more than 20 research papers for himself and holds 2 patents. Mohit sir is quite a known name within the institute as well as among all the budding entrepreneurs. He's a serial entrepreneur, starting again to disrupt luxury vacation marketplace through his startup Resort. After founding India's first unicorn and global technology powerhouse InMobi, he has built and mentored, scaled one of the most awesome technology organizations that forms the backbone of InMobi's global business. More so, he is the winner of Distinguished Alumnus Award last year in 2019. And he is also an engineer from IIT Roorkee, did his engineering BTech in 1997 in metallurgical and material sciences. And also he got his advanced management course from Harvard in 2016. Akash was also about to join us. He may join us in the due course of time. Till then, when he joins, I'll introduce him also to you. But before we begin with Mohit sir and Ajay sir, let me toss a question to you, Mohit sir. This is an unprecedented situation. We are talking about new normal. Some people say that it is abnormal. I would like to know your thoughts, being a seasoned entrepreneur, been into the business for so long. Had you also fathomed something like this could have happened in the last 3 or 4 months? And how exactly are you responding to this change scenario?
So I think, I have been an entrepreneur since 2008 and, whether you call us fortunate or unfortunate, at InMobi, we have seen a lot of crises, the financial crisis of 2008, and then there was a real estate recession over here in 2014. But what we are seeing right now is completely unprecedented. And the reason I'm saying it is unprecedented is because in most of the cases, I think there was always something fundamentally wrong with the system. So in 2008, it was a financial meltdown. There was a lot of bad bet which was played on subprime loan and it blew up on your face. So when those kind of scenario happen, at least the reason is clear and people also know that why it had happened, and possibly since you know what happened and why it happened, there could be a light at the end of the tunnel and people can figure out, what needs to be done. The problem that we are dealing today is basically, I think anything, in my opinion, happens to financial sector, economy, or anything else, possibly, you can weather it out and you can solve it. We are dealing with an issue which is impacting people's life, and I think it has completely shaken up the entire world, especially the developed world, Western part and in US. If you think about it, I was here in 9/11 when 3,000 people died, and it was one of the biggest, catastrophe that I had seen at that point of time. But if you see the number right now, pretty much 911 is happening on daily basis in US. 2,000 to 3,000 people are dying because of COVID-11, and it has completely demolished the perception of superpower. I'm in San Francisco. We are in locked in state for almost last 3 months. And I have seen how a superpower was, brought to its knees and nothing mattered. People were struggling to get basic ventilator, food, and everything that you possibly would assume is a third world problem, poverty, food, and all. I think this incident, in my opinion, is a great equalizer, and I think it will be completely fair to say that it will, post COVID era will be a new world. I'm also not sure that how this problem will completely go away. Scientists are already predicting that, when the fall or winter start, it will start to come back, and there is a race on the vaccine itself. But what is something very crucial over here is to understand it has pretty much put a stop to almost every industry engine that you can imagine, from manufacturing to finance to trade to anything, because, when you talk about 2008 or those kind of problem, you generally have a part of industry that is being hit very massively while everything else continue to work, so a school, hospital, manufacturing, retail store, they were all working, and obviously people had setback, some people lost their saving, a lot of things happen in that area. But if you think about most of the Asia, Europe, possibly it was impacted based on their exposure in that crisis. But what happened over here, I think the entire system is at gridlock, and no continent and no country is immune to it. You have seen started from one part of the Asia and pretty much sweep the entire globe, and people are still figuring out and dealing, how to completely come out of it. And so far, all we are seeing is some of the stimulus package, which may work, which may not. But restarting the whole economy is completely unprecedented. The global GDP has shrink multiple point basis over here. So I think, you can call us, we are either one of the most fortunate or one of the most unfortunate generation who has seen something like it.
Interesting to have your thoughts, sir. I mean, definitely I would agree to most of the things which you have said. And yeah, these are unprecedented situations. I would now move to Ajay sir. Ajay sir, government is a behemoth, and MeitY has been doing a lot of things. We have been hearing about schemes to promote entrepreneurs. How exactly the ministry is responding to this new situation? Means we are known to see ministry as somebody who works more on physical files, physical meetings. How are you coping up with these new strange situations?
Thank you, Ajam. This is a great opportunity to connect back to your alumna matter. And no matter, I would have loved to be physically present, but as Mohit rightly said, it's a very difficult time, and whatever best is possible, we need to do. Yeah, I understand the government has got its own lethargy. The governments have their own colonial hangovers in India and all that. But one thing good has happened because of the COVID. This hangover has gone. When I was in 2011 looking after the e-governance in the Ministry of Electronics and IT, so I pushed this concept of an electronic office of files moving on computers. It pushed me. I took a lot of initiatives, but for 2 years I struggled. Sometimes it was the Secretary Government of India not ready to look at electronic files. Sometimes the minister will not look at it. And if one element is not there who is actually very keen to do that, it will never happen. But now, because of the circumstances, everyone is looking at electronic files. And so the government has completely moved from physical to electronic. Many of the processes which were actually hard-coded to be received in physical, you need a letter, you need a signed copy, and all that has also gone, and people are comfortable working on emails and other means. So this is one thing. More important with regard to government is moving forward from Mohit, that if the world has reached it, everyone has come to a ground zero. And this is an unprecedented time in the history of we as alive human beings. I'm much older than you, but we also have never seen, or my grandparents might have also not seen a situation like this. So after the great economic fall, this might be the second occasion when the whole world has come to a ground zero as a total. And so the whole economy will be reset. In addition, the way human interacts with humans will also change. There has to be a technology interface, or there has to be an external interface to build trust between two humans. If you want to have a meeting tomorrow, you need a certificate to be transferred between two you that you both are safe from what is known as a present virus or the future viruses that might emerge. So what is happening is that the human interaction itself will be through a media called technology. So whereas this is a distance, this is an era where the problem is the economy will take a great downturn, but this is also an opportunity for an Indian mindset to move from primarily a services industry to an innovative IP-driven tech product industry. There is an opportunity of around what I foresee around $10 trillion of buying in the tech space. that will be created due to COVID, and we need to find a space. But the important factor in this regard is how we actually place ourselves. Do we have to emulate the Silicon Valley model where we actually mature a technology and then bring it to the market and are obsessed with technology? Or adopt a Chinese model where you bring it to the market to mature it? Or something new as a model that needs to be merged? That is important to understand as an entrepreneur community, as a tech development community, which we all Rudkyites are or Thomsonians are, to be rightly, this word has never come to. So all we Thomsonians need to understand that we are all techies in love how the technology has to unfold. Today, India has an opportunity. It is the speed and it is the strategy that is important. How do we place ourselves? So COVID is not only a distress, but because the global supply chain has come to a ground zero and has rejigged, and people which were a destination which was actually heart of the whole global supply chain till that is itself being questioned and being isolated by the world. So that opportunity is for India to actually see and how do we take that opportunity. And yes, everyone has to rediscover themselves. Every country has to rediscover, every entity has to rediscover, the government has to rediscover. And I know all three, government, academia, and industry, have to work at a pace which is unprecedented in history to bring us back to a new normal, what you call, if that new normal has to be comfortable. Thank you.
That's an interesting observation, sir. I mean, you talked about the $10 trillion worth of opportunities. I think it is, in a way, it is extremely exciting for technocrats like all of us over here, how to basically harness those opportunities. I would like to start, a bit more deep dive into this number. So when you say 10 trillion, do you have some sectors or domains in your mind which can actually be more attractive than others? Obviously, healthcare may be one idea because we talk a lot about healthcare. But in your view, what could be the potential domains for the future?
Me or Mohit?
Sorry?
Achha, let me start for it. Yeah. Everyone talks about that healthcare will be a big buying sector that will be there. Yes, healthcare will be a big buying sector because the type of distress that is there, the normal physical healthcare systems will not be able to take care of it. A lot of digital infusion has to be there, a lot of technology infusion has to be there for the healthcare sector. But there are opportunities which were unforeseen. I met your own incubator one day, some few days back. He made a UV-based, I think, a lift or a robo. Now, this UV-based technology for disinfecting virus has been known for long. It's not a rocket science that emerges today. But what I think is it's an unprecedented opportunity in today's day that if UV-based appliances and equipment and trust elements come into the market, they will definitely come. But the point here is this new market, who will capture it? Will it again be China, or we at a pace that startups have created, the young entrepreneurs have created solutions? Are we in a position to bring them to the market? Are we able to create right protectionist measures that makes Make in India possible? That's the whole question that we need to talk about. I'm not talking as a government official right now. I'm talking about as an Indian, that it is important right now that whatever opportunities has been created, we encash it first. Rather than being users of those technologies, we should be producers of those technologies. Then is the opportunity.
Sure. Mohit sir, taking cue from what Ajay sir has said, possibly if we are looking for things to be made locally or technologies to be developed locally, though we have built up a pretty strong ecosystem for supporting startup and entrepreneurship here in India, but there must be something in lacking that we are not able to build some world level technology based startups over here in India. You've been a part of US, where right now you're in California. What do you think? And now we have, director from METI also with us. What do you think is lacking or probably we can do better here in India to create such startups?
No, so first of all, I think I actually 100% agree with what just Ajay sir just said. I think this problem is a tremendous opportunity for us, to reset everything. And before that, actually, I'm going to tell you something very interesting that I'm personally observing and feeling. So I look after overall in Mobi technology still, and there are three big units that we have. One is basically Western world, which is US and Europe. Then we have APAC, basically entire Asia, including India, except China. And China, we have separate business. We are one of the company who have a very big operation in China. So I'll tell you, we are seeing this problem from the day one because, on January, our team in China informed us that this is so and such kind of virus. And in fact, to be honest, 50% of my team was in Wuhan, and this was Chinese New Year. So some of them were, already traveled over there. So what was interesting for me to see was how authorities swept in to that country, and once again, we all know that China is a little authoritarian regime, but they absolutely locked down the entire region, and nobody was able to go out. And when they did that, and whatever you want to, beyond the conspiracy theory or anything that I'm not getting into that, there was sufficient amount of planning was around it. How people will get food, how sick will be taken out, on top of tracking. Because anyway, I think privacy and all doesn't matter over there. Just tracking every patient and contact point and all those things. And it was just mind blowing for me to see. The other thing was, which is obviously, when it came and they were able to control it for 2 months, in 2 months and whatever it was. And, to be honest, there could be more number, less number. I don't know that, but at least I saw this part because, I was constantly in touch with my employee over there. When you see the same flavor of the problem in US and Asia world, I think we both have different kind of problem. In US, it's a completely consumption-based economy. Pretty much, even from tissue paper to toilet paper, everything come from China. And as soon as that supply chain was stopped, the dollar didn't help anyone over here. You can have all the money in the world. Pretty much we had nothing. So for first month, despite of the top notch infrastructure and police, cops, everything everywhere, we lacked basic entities just like any third world countries. Not enough food, not enough tissue paper. Even hospital, they didn't have ventilator because they either come from Europe or they come from China. And once again, supply chain was broken. So that was the story in one of the most developed country in the world. That's the superpower that you called. So pretty much completely caught off because they had no strength on manufacturing or the basic need that are required for the life. Now coming back to the India, I think US still can afford to not have manufacturing because, the dollar still has a power and you can still purchase, you can still get your way by arm twist and you can do that. But I think for India, I think we have given up on manufacturing way too soon and it cannot happen. And I think this is a God-given opportunity for us because there is a lot of repercussion that is going to happen around China manufacturing supply chain, theory over here. Every Western world and every US and big power is looking to safeguard, they should have at least 2-3 places, including they need to start manufacturing over in US as well. But I think India is in incredible position, one of the largest democracy, more or less stable country that can produce a very good alternative to all the things that can be made in China now can be made in India as well. I think we have all the technology, we have all the talent, we have all the know-how and even natural resources that are needed to that part of world. But somehow I think we are still failing to put everything into a actionable plan that can be acted upon within 4-year, 5-year or 10-year plan. So I think, and even the collaboration between private and public sector, I think in India is quite sad in my opinion. A lot of people want to do anything, but one way or other way, it just somewhere it gets stuck. I think people like Ajay sir and I spoke to Subodh, one of our junior in STPI as well. I think there are some great people that are coming in the governance right now, and I hope that all power to them. That some of these things need to be driven very hard where we move beyond the policy and towards the action and the result. And this is for both public and private collaboration. I don't think it is always government responsibility. I think private sector also has to, pull in and stop being just the back office and service provider to the world.
I will come to you regarding some of the challenges which startups might now be facing. Fundraising has been cited as one of the most critical issues during these times. At least for the last 3 or 4 months, people have been actually looking for funding, and it is not coming in. So, what is your suggestion or advice to startups? How should they be meticulous in the usage of the funds which they have already raised or which are in the process of raising funds?
So I have two theories. One thing is basically the company who are in survivor mode, and almost every company is in survivor mode at this point in time. There are few sector who are flourishing, like food delivery and logistic, but otherwise every other company is in distress. So I think the analogy that I want to use is basically called a hedgehog strategy. So if you know hedgehog, basically what it does, basically whenever it comes under the threat of a predator, it just wrap itself around like a ball, and it has spikes on its body. So the one thing it does is basically because of that spikes, the predator is not able to attack it. But one most important thing that it does is basically when it rolls itself up like a ball, it completely reduces or slows down its metabolism. So it can survive in that stage for a longer period of time. So I think the need of the hour for every company and every startup is conserve cash. I think basically this is not the time to afford any kind of luxury or do anything that does not matter, or rather that does not have a tactical or short-term advantage. You can always come back and basically you can do things which may matter from 2 years, 3 year down the line. And as a company, possibly even at InMobi and Resort, we have taken a hard call, even $100, $1,000 looked into every expenses. Somewhere we have done some people cost restructuring as well. But I think that's the only way, so that if you have 6 months worth of money, how you can make it 18 months worth of money. So that is one thing. Because there will be a short-term crunch, from VC and everywhere else, because everyone doesn't know where this thing is heading. So possibly if they were making a decision in 2 months, now they will make decision in 4 months to 6 months. But the positive side is, the VC, all the venture capitalists, they are given money by their LPs to grow it. So they also have a pressure to basically pick the bets, and they have to constantly doing that, because if they don't do that, then they will not be able to provide those return, and that's not good for VC companies. So they will be more judicious, but they will be looking, and they will be also going through in their head that, what are how the new post-COVID world will look like, and what are the areas and what are the places where basically they need to spend. And I'm pretty sure some very brilliant ideas or very brilliant opportunities will present itself, in the dark cloud of this problem, that some of the entrepreneurs should pick. And I think they will get funded quite quickly. So for example, I'm pretty sure this pandemic is not going anywhere. And if not this one, something else is coming quite a lot. So things on basically mental health, well-being of the people, the life needs to go back to what you need versus what you want. We were just in too much, the whole world was shifting too much towards the capitalism and doing things that you want, and you may not need it necessarily, but everyone is now looking for the basic amenities in life. And how do you solve that, the quality of life for people, from health to mental well-being to even the basic need? I think those opportunities are very ripe.
So like, for example, a startup who is into a B2C business, and initially to have good traction, they are offering their product at a subsidized price and or maybe sometimes even for free. How do you think that they should, in these circumstances of uncertainty, people do not know what exactly is going to happen the next 2 months or 3 months, how should they weigh or balance their profitability vis-a-vis growth aspect of journey?
So I think the time of, the mindless growth is gone completely. I don't think now all the companies will find it very difficult to grow without figuring out the product market fit or unit economy. Almost every company that did in the past, we all so InMobi has been we are physically very conservative right from day one. So that model never made sense to me, and now I have more reason to believe, because every such model that was built on mindless growth is pretty much dead right now. From WeWork to Airbnb, even you see Uber, Ola, Swiggy, Oyo. All these guys are now cutting back because they were spending $10 to make $1. So the problem with these businesses are every year you have to keep raising $1 billion to fund this artificial growth, and I don't think they are going to have that kind of scenario existing anymore. So most of the company, they have already started putting down a brake. In fact, to be honest, the repercussion is so bad that WeWork people don't even believe it's a tech company. They say it's a real estate, so their valuation even has gone to negative. Same thing is with Ola and Uber. Ola, Uber, and Lyft. One more company over here, because social distancing is now going to be part of our life. So people are questioning that this cab share. People be even coming in a car with 5 strangers. Because you never know who could be sick and who not. So I think all those models, they have to go back to the drawing board, and they have to figure out what is really the need of the market, and focus on the services where they know the money can be made eventually. And that eventually cannot be 5 years, 10 years down the line. It needs to be fairly quick. Otherwise, they'll be dead. I don't think they are going to get any more backing.
Ajay sir, I would like to bring you again in the picture. Like Mohit sir said about the role of the private companies or the industry to develop this particular climate. I mean, the government of India is doing a lot of programs, but the role of private sector, I think, is still not as expected. What do you think, how we can engage more with the private sector, especially for startups where we are active in, like most of the startups which we work with are B2B, like technology intensive startups. So how to get them connected to the private, or get private industry encouraged to invest more in terms of money or expertise or everything else?
Ajay, if you this is right now is 12:35. This can take me 2 hours to actually discuss this topic, and this is very close to my heart. The first question we all must ask ourselves is why Mohit is sitting in SF4 right now. Why not in Gurgaon or Bangalore? The basic question to that, Mohit, correct me if I'm wrong. And the basic question is that the rupee capital or the rupee venture does not exist in India. Whereas people know that the new age technologies have a faster growth opportunities as compared to old age technology. So our businesses are not risk takers. They do not invest or put money into new ventures. That's the basic problem. So even though we have done everything right, the startups also, once they show promise, move out of India. That's the biggest challenge we need to handle. We need to handle that. How do we bring in rupee capital as investment tools into startups? That is very, very essential. We are looking at a software product development fund to bring in rupee capital into product space, because it's totally missing. And till the time rupee capital is not there, promising startups will all move out of India. So it will be the similar situation which happened in the 60s when we as graduates from Roorkee or IITs, the first destination for us used to be the H-1B visa and take a H-1B visa and move to US. So whatever has been invested in this premier education was being leveraged by the US economy. And today, we have graduated from only being a graduate from these premier institutes, also producing some niche IP and niche companies, and that too moving out of India. If you see, for example, InMobi is one example, a unicorn. You look at Flipkart, it was basically a Singaporean company when it was sold. And you take any company, no one remains as Indian company because rupee capital is totally missing in India. What is lacking, where the government lacks, it is important we have to look at it. The second important point is that the role of the industry, the technology infusion in the industry has been minimal. MSMEs and companies are ready to use technology and use new age technologies rightfully. I remember there was a presentation by Mohit's company some 2 years back. You had a HRM tool, I suppose. You were actually planning to sell it to Indian Oil. Correct me, Mohit. Huh? Was it true?
No, sir. It must be somebody else.
It might be. So what was there was that from moving from your captive data centers to cloud-based technologies or SaaS models, companies do not still have models. How do we actually use SaaS fruitfully to lower the cost? Companies do not have models where they can use technologies to improve their productivity and reduce their cost. But the good part is that COVID has forced them to do that. COVID has forced people to work from home. COVID has rejected the technology and forced people to actually use new ways. So it will not be now they have to think, they have to do. And that might force industry and the government to think differently. And the space that will be created because of this has to be taken by the new age startups, because they are the technology providers. These are all others are seekers and facilitators.
So I have many questions now coming up as we are talking. One question which I would like to put up to you, Ajay sir. This is regarding what are the implications of fund of funds put together by Government of India under the rupees 20 lakh crore relief package that has been announced. Is this going to attract more global VCs to the startups, or is it going to have any implication? Because I think that global VCs are already here in India.
There was an electronic development fund, there was a SIDBI angel fund, which were already there. The difference between a fund of funds, this fund of funds, and the older fund of funds, or the fund of funds which MeitY is contemplating, is which is more debt-ridden. It is not equity-based. And the difference is there that no one right now, no VC will be in a position to evaluate a company and invest as an equity in it right now. What you require is a debt fund which gives a short-term liquidity space to the startups, to MSMEs, where there might be a government backing or a collateral which is provided if a failure is there, and that is required to be infused in the whole MSME sector for it to actually overcome the COVID scenario. It's not the best case scenario. In the digital space, it's a little different. In a digital space, there are companies or young companies which have to go back to their drawing boards, as Mohit rightly said, rethink their models, their business models, their technology models, that how will they still be relevant or will be more relevant in the post-COVID era, and then go back to the investor community. So what I say in many of my talks is that many of the startups which have graduated have to again go back to their alumna mater or incubators to actually rethink on their strategies for the future.
Sure.
And for that, what we are doing is we are beginning a COVID innovation fund, which will help companies or startups, mature startups, with one proof of concept to quickly reject their technology. And then we are trying to build a fund over it which can invest in that.
I think that's good news, especially for startups in the early stage. Mohit sir, I have a few questions for you also which are now coming up. Rahul Bansal, he's asking that you spoke about the manufacturing capability in India. Would like to hear more about the labor and labor unions. How are they handled in China or Europe or US? What should India do to improvise on this sector which is most unorganized? I think probably it is a broad.
So I think so once again, I have a very, very radical thought on it. But my point is, I think fundamentally, I believe we Indians still believe in a slave mentality. When I say slave mentality, and this is, I just want to link the problem that Ajay sir was saying, that why we don't have in SME or MSME the infusion of technology, why it takes time, because it's always cheaper and easy to throw problem. We still have places where you can go to states and you can go to various cities where human scavenging is allowed. I have personally seen people basically jumping into a gutter and cleaning up, and sometimes they are dying over there. How, as a human, we can allow that to happen in our country? I think so. My thing is, the reason we are okay with subpar product and we are not leveraging the technology and the world class product, because we always throw human to the people because they're cheaper to use. The exploitation is quite prevalent, and in order to basically uplift the whole thing, in my opinion, I think the labor laws need to be a little bit more stronger in country. There has to be basic income, there has to be basic lifestyle that need to be guaranteed to every people. Look at how migrants are moving from here and there, and that is one thing that is just taking the completely focus away from everything that Indian government has done so well. With 1.3 billion population, so many less infection, the number of deaths are so contained, the lockdown is so effective, but all the newspaper is showing basically how people are walking 1400 and 1500 kilometers and all those things just to basically survive and go back to the home. So coming back to Rahul's point, I think our labor laws are still pretty old. While they talk about strike and all those kind of things, which do not have much significance and relevance in that word. But having said that, we still need to ensure that, the people can have a healthy life while working for these company. And then when people are happy, when they are financially secure, they actually make good product. Until unless that part is happy, that part is not happening, nobody's worrying about quality and nobody is taking pride in what they are building. And I think we have that kind of scenario. This is what is very different in US. This is what is very different in China. US is an extreme capitalistic country, but you cannot fire an employee from Ford and GM. It will be a 6-month process before you can even touch them. So you see that exists in a capitalistic capital as well.
There is one more question to from the same gentleman. And the reason why I'm taking this question is because maybe this is relevant for most of the students who are here in the campus and also for the employees. What he says is that people are afraid that of the lack of opportunities for fresh graduates, and layoffs are also going to happen in various firms. How are you, Mohit sir, handling these kind of situations in your organization? What is your advice to the startups in this regard? How should they tackle the workforce now?
No, so obviously, I think there is definitely a period where we are seeing some major restructuring. So I think if you go back 6 months, if we needed 10 people, I was not minding having 15, because it's always good to have good talent with you. But now once again, we are in a scenario where if you need 10, we are asking people to, hey, can you make your life go about normal with 6 people? So those sort of things will happen, and there will be a temporary, you will see a little bit of, dip in terms of how people are hiring. But I don't think it is going to be a very long lasting. As I said, and I think Ajay sir was also saying, the new opportunity will emerge and they would require people. So I don't think that, there will always be, the good thing about India is basically our in-home economy itself is quite big. We still need to produce a lot of stuff. The consumption has to go up because we have a huge population, and pretty much everywhere from infrastructure to everything, there's a lot of demand that can be built up very quickly, and we are also more resilient as compared to other nations. So whether you take 2008, 2014, and even 9/11 and all those things, while India was impacted, but never to an extent where everyone else was impacted. So I think for us, it will be a 3-4 month period where people will see a dip, and after that, there should be a pent-up demand for people and folks. What startups should do is basically, at this point of time, I think, as I said earlier, once again, they need to fine-tune and have a laser focus on what their idea is going to be going forward in a post-COVID world. And what a student can do, and what basically the folks, young people out of college, they can do is basically, education never go waste. I think they can sharpen up their fundamental. In fact, to be honest, one opportunity I see is a fresh engineer out of the college versus 2-year engineer experience. The only difference is of salary. So many people will opt out for fresher rather than going for 1 year and 2-year engineering. So I think, this kind of adjustment will happen in market, in my opinion.
For startups like they themselves, for founders who just passed out from engineering, they themselves do not know how to tackle this, but they got funding and then they hired people. Do you think they would be able to manage how to lay off people and all those things? Do you think that is going to be add further stress to the already stressed mindset of a
Yes,
founder?
definitely. Whenever it comes to people, it's not an easy decision. It's a very emotional one, and I think this is my 12th year in entrepreneurship, and I always hate that part. Every time it comes, I make a promise to myself. This day should never come, but business is such. These cycle will keep coming. I think for a new fresher, a new startup, there are many ways to do it. Because I think new startup runs a lot on passion, and most of the people who join these startup, they join because of the idea or because of the founder, or even just fun or thrill of doing a startup. So I think they should figure out, can they take a pay cut, because I'm pretty sure most of these people will be quite young. You don't have those kind of liabilities in life. You can't take that kind of risk. So instead of laying people off, so let's say if you have 10 people, rather than paying everyone, if you take 50 cut salary, pretty much you have a cost of 5 people, So you can still have 10 folks, but you can do 50% salary. For example, at InMobi, we founders have decided that we cannot take any salary until the things are normalized. So some of those things, from top management or even founders, they can even go to that length. So some of those things, I think they should figure out. A small startup should not resort to layoff unless until, like I said, conserving cash is also very important. But if that is not the question, and they can do some other paths which are not that surgical, like cutting the salary, cutting the expenses, move out of expensive offices, go to some incubator, even sit at home, just rent a home and just make a room an office, those sort of things. I think so all those avenues and all those options needs to be explored.
Ajay sir, if you are there, we have few questions for you because you've been a research scholar yourself and you have gone through that process. Few of the research scholars and PhDs and postdoc fellows are there in the audience today. And what they're asking is that what are the opportunities for them? How should they take up this life? Because now they are at an advanced stage of their life. Some of them, they also have family. And now at the point when they were looking for a job, the scenario is not looking very good. So how can they take the jump, first of all, in the startup domain? And what is your advice to them?
I know it's a difficult time. For the next few months, it will be quite uncertain. But on top of it, as Mohit rightly said, India has a lot of resilience, and things come back to normal much faster as compared to rest of the world. So you can still keep hope in the opportunities that will be created. And one thing is for sure, education never goes waste, and better education will be the new normal that will be there post-COVID. Technology will be the driver of economy. It was always said that Internet 4.0 will be coming to the world in next 10 years and will take over technology space in the next 10 years. But in my view, might happen in next 3 to 4 years. If you take what Mohit talked about, Uber and Ola facing challenges, the only solution to that is an augmented vehicle. You can't today afford a driver or a chauffeur for your car. You will always like an automatic car to actually replace a chauffeur-driven car. So a lot of things, technology will be the driver of new age technology. Infusion will come at a much faster pace. And if it has to be done at a pace which is required, education is the key driver to the future economy. And so they don't have a bad time. Yeah, next few months will be challenging. And I think we, as have gone through that journey, PhD students don't mind. Actually, their guide has accustomed them enough to take huge challenges, that too in IITs and Roorkee.
Sir, if I ask you, Ajay sir, and maybe for a moment you don the hat of an investor, what could be your top 3 sectors where you see most growth coming up for the startups, apart from the digital which you are leading?
Education or edutech. The education sector will see a lot of investment. The trust will be the biggest in the biggest factor which will actually be invested in trust, whether it's related to human connect, trust related to people using devices and spaces. In every sector, trust will be where trust related technologies, trust related solutions will be great. Human being replaced by machines will be the next sector that will be important. You might not see that many nurses or not that many hospitality people, they being replaced by robots or all that. So manufacturing has to come back in a big way, in a much more accelerated way. And the country which does not bring manufacturing to its shores will be vanished. But one very important thing is there will be a re-emergence of the protectionist measures across the world. And I won't be surprised if the second Cold War comes back.
These are big words. So, I mean, we've never witnessed Cold War era. So probably people for our generation, it will be almost a new thing. We have only heard it or read it in the books. Coming back to you, Mohit sir, what would be your top three sectors where you think startups would find maximum opportunities to flourish?
I think health is going to be a very important one. I guess, what this pandemic has done, if you see the statistics, especially, and I'm calling out US, majority of the people who have died because of COVID is not because the COVID or respiratory failure alone. It was the second existing condition which they were dealing with, whether it was weak lungs, weak heart, and all those things, which that got compounded. And the prognosis of such people was so bad that especially in New York, almost 80% of the people who had a pre-existing condition and who went on to the ventilator didn't survive at one point of time. So I think this, now once again, a focus is going to come back on personal well-being, and when I'm talking about personal well-being, it's not about, just gymming and physical bodybuilding, what I'm talking about. I think that is more to do with aesthetic, and it has its own benefit, but it's naturally, are you fit? Is your immunity right? Are you eating right? And do you feel good? I think India is a emerging economy, and our food habit have changed drastically in last couple of years. So if you see, we are becoming a diabetic capital of the world, and people usually don't take care of themselves. So I think that is one sector where I believe it's going to be, very important. Everyone is start to think about it. The second sector, I believe, as Ajay sir was saying, I think remote working is going to be a reality right now. So people have to think productivity all over again. So anything, that can basically improvise that is going to have a phenomenal opportunity. In fact, one of our junior, possibly our alumni, you must be knowing Lalit Mangal, he has this AirMeet. I use that software, and pretty much I felt like being in a conference with many people. So, the chances are there is not going to be any more big conferences, at least for next couple of months. So do you completely stop them? No, I think you do it online. So that is one area, anything that can help employee engagement, remote working, productivity is going to be one important component in my opinion. Last but not least, but I would also say, I think I still remain, very bullish on India has to play a bigger role in sophisticated manufacturing, whether it is a small robotic thing or, appliances, equipment and everything. We have taken a very big hit, and we have gone backward, so we used to make, in fact, to be honest, one of our first funding came from Onida Group, when we were founding InMobi. Onida used to be pretty good TV, it was a fairly ahead of its time, and we were doing that. And there was a time when, I don't know whether you guys remember or not, the VCR and VCPs, these Akais and all, they were all getting built in Nagpur and Maharashtra and all those things. So pretty much we have given up because importing them was cheaper, But what do you do when your plane are not working, when shipping lines are broken or they are not working? So we have to rely on what we produce. So I think that is one sector which I believe, I hope the government will bring some sort of mandate or something. I'm pretty sure today in US, Trump talks about he's going to penalize every company who will deliberately take their manufacturing out of US. So I think if US can do that, we cannot afford to not do in our country.
There is one interesting question by Shubham, and I would take this question because it's basically challenging the premise. And what he's saying is that it is a mistake to say this COVID-19 situation a new normal. And this is basically all blown up because USA tried and they failed to control the situation. What is your view on this, Moisa?
My thing is there is a little bit of exaggeration over there, but the problem remains same. You don't know what you don't know. So the big problem with COVID-19 is we don't know how to treat it. And if there is a virus and there is a pandemic out there, it always a worrisome scenario. And I would also tell you one more thing: in Asian countries and any place else, I don't know how reliable the numbers are, because our loss of life on daily basis is massive. If you think about it, forget about COVID. 24 people died because two truck carrying migrants collided. So I think in Western world these gets highlighted quite a lot because people don't die here easily. These are the countries where if you have 100 people dying for whatever reason, it becomes a national issue, and people may lose election for that. So I think that is a little bit of exaggeration is over there. But what I have seen in New York, because my cousin himself is a doctor over there, and he didn't come home for 12 days. And the horror story he was telling, that they were literally pulling the ventilator out from one patient and giving it to other patient based on who will survive and who won't. The situation was quite scary. And I think it's a fact that this virus is impacting the countries which has little bit colder climate. So in India, I think we caught it at the beginning of summer, so we may not have seen the worst of it possibly. So I wouldn't say we can't lower our guard, because I think unless until vaccine is there, it is going to come back in winter, and then it may come back with more vengeance and more ferocity.
So do you think this is not a normal, but maybe a temporary situation which we have to just live by and probably?
Yes, it is a temporary situation. I'm pretty sure, I think a vaccine will be found within 6 months, 8 months, or 1 year from now, and it will become just like a smallpox, I mean, think about it. A smallpox and all those things, they were big pandemic and millions people died. But once you got the vaccine, I mean, every kid is getting as soon as they are born, and you live with it, So I think this is going to be one more such problem. I do think, but this will not be end of it. If it's not COVID-19, something else. If you see what has happened in last 20 years, every 5 years we have one such virus is coming, from SARS to MERS to Ebola to Zika to this, and they are becoming more and more deadly. It's because of I mean, you may want to call it increased number of deforestation, the human wild conflict and lifestyle and habits and everything. So the jump from animal to human is happening more and more often, and it is happening in a more deadly way. So we need to expect that some more of these things will come, and how we cope up in future is what is going to be very important.
Ajay sir, same question to you. Do you also think that this is just a temporary phase which we have to live by, and maybe things will come back to the previous normal?
As far as the virus is concerned, as Mohit rightly said, whether it's there for few months, few days, or few years, or whether you get a vaccine or don't get a vaccine, these are questions that I can't answer, and I think no one in this world can answer. If the problem today is that we do not have a strategy, either a short-term, long-term, and medium-term or a long-term strategy to handle the pandemic. And that's because everyone is unaware of what is going to be and how it has to be managed. But we as a human race is resilient to any challenges. So we'll find a strategy at least in next few months to handle it for a small term, long term, or medium term, or a long term. Once we have a strategy to tackle the situation, then the risk or the fear will go off. And with the successful strategy. Today, the only successful strategy, if someone says, is lock yourself completely inside the home and shut the world. And that cannot happen for long. You have to have a practical strategy, a working strategy, and a normal human activity. So my take on this is that human resilience will overcome this crisis in next few months, and we will emerge stronger. But yes, with a new normal. That I still believe in, and I insist on that.
Thank you very much, sir. I think with that, I would just request last comment from both of our panelists. To begin with Mohit sir, if you can give your last comment to the students, being an alumni and being a seasoned entrepreneur, what would be your advice to all of us here?
So my only, I think, most important thing that I would like to call out is, I think I don't think we need to have a fear mentality. I think this is a big problem, and there is no denying from it. And there is a big problem that we all must address, and we need to take it head on. But at the same point of time, I think human race is quite resilient. The reason we are on top of the chain is because we adopt and we evolve in every kind of circumstances. So I think hope is, in my opinion, is more powerful than fear. And we should replace fear with cautious. This is not end of the world. It's a temporary setback here and there, and we all have to deal with and move on with our lives. But I think this will open up multiple opportunities. It will bring back focus to a good human life, which is more based on what you need versus what you want. And this has also basically sort of, I think, in my opinion, acted as an equalizer within countries, within superpower, within society, within rich, poor, old, young. This is a great opportunity to basically have every human being at same level and do something, or basically, focus on things or building things which will impact all our life rather than focusing a particular segment or target.
Ajay sir, what would be your last thought on this?
My last thought on this is that believe in yourself, stay put. You need to have a small term patience to actually deal with it, and you'll come out stronger. The second, we all are part of the technology world. The technology will be the enabler for the future, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's any sector of economy. Technology will make a difference, and technology will make the new normal. So this is an opportunity era. You have to, within the time you are stay putting or you are keeping low, think that how can you bring a disruptive change to this world? How can you bring disruptive innovations? And that's the future in which we can, as technology people, can make a difference. I don't see that this is something which we need to fear about, but need to be little scared about, and the hope should always be there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Technology is the enabler. These are the right words. And I also think that maybe some of the old business models which have been destroyed now may have to come back in the new shape. With this, I think I would like to thank both our panelists. Mohit sir, he's been taking this session at a very odd hours in California. And also Ajay sir for taking his time out from his busy schedule and sharing his thoughts. So thank you very much, both of you. And thank you very much, the audience, for patiently listening to us. I hope we will bring up some more engaging conversations in the near future. So thank you very much and all the best. See you again.
Thank you.